I'm grateful to give this homily, read this homily that Pope Francis would have pronounced himself.
In questa domenica particolare. Nella celebrazione eucaristica,
in the Eucharistic celebration, where communion assumes a fullness of a full dimension, mostly significant, we hear Pope Francis, while he's still in hospital, we feel him very close to us. We feel him present among us. Even though he is in hospital, he's very close to us. And this then obliges us to make our prayer even more intense, that the Lord helps him in this moment of challenge, in this challenging moment of sickness.
Il messaggio delle letture che abbiamo ascoltato,
the message of today's readings can be summed up in a single word, gratuity. That is surely a word dear to you as deacons, gathered here for the Jubilee celebration.
So
let us reflect on three specific aspects of this fundamental dimension of the Christian life in general and your ministry in particular. The three aspects are forgiveness, selfless service, and communion. First, forgiveness.
L'annuncio del perdono è un compito essenziale del diacono.
The proclamation of forgiveness is an essential part of your ministry as deacons. Indeed, forgiveness is an indispensable element of every ecclesial vocation and a requirement of every human relationship. Jesus points to its necessity and importance when he says, "Love your enemies." This is certainly true. If we are to grow together and to share in one another's strengths and weaknesses, achievements and failures, we need to be able to forgive and to ask forgiveness, to rebuild relationships, and even to choose not to withhold our love from those who hurt or betray us.
A
world that feels nothing but hatred towards its adversaries is a world without hope and without a future, doomed to endless wars, divisions, and vendettas. Sadly, this is what we are witnessing today on many different levels and in all parts of the world. Forgiveness means preparing a welcoming and safe future for us and our communities. Deacons, personally charged with a ministry that carries them to the peripheries of our world, are committed to seeing and teaching others to see in everyone, even in those who do us wrong and cause us suffering, a hurting sister or brother, and hence one in greater need than anyone of reconciliation, guidance, and help.
Di questa apertura di cuore ci parla la prima lettura.
Today's first reading speaks of this openness of heart, presenting us with David's loyal and selfless love for Saul. He is king, but also his persecutor. We see this again in the exemplary death of the deacon Stephen, who forgives those who are stoning him. Above all, we find it exemplified in Jesus, the model of all diaconia. who, in emptying himself to the point of giving his life for us on the cross, prays for those who crucify him and opens the gates of paradise to the good thief.
E veniamo al secondo punto, il servizio disinteressato. Il Signore nel Vangelo
This brings us to the second point, selfless service. The Lord describes it in the Gospel in words that are simple and clear. Do good and lend expecting nothing in return. A phrase that is brief, yet evokes the beauty of friendship. First, God's friendship towards us, but also our own friendship. For you as deacons, selfless service is not a secondary aspect of your activity, but an essential dimension of your very being. Indeed, through your ministry, you devote yourselves to being sculptors and painters of the merciful face of the Father and witnesses to the mystery of the triune God.
In molti passi evangelici, Gesù parla di sé in questa luce.
In many gospel passages, Jesus speaks of himself in this light. He does so with Philip in the upper room, when shortly after washing the feet of the 12, he says, "Whoever has seen me has seen the Father." And again, when he institutes the Eucharist, he says, "I am among you as one who serves." Yet even earlier, on the way to Jerusalem, when his disciples had argued among themselves about who was the greatest, he had explained that the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many.
Fratelli diaconi, il lavoro gratuito che svolgete dunque come espressione della vostra consacrazione alla
Brother
carità di
deacons,
Cristo
the gratuitous work you carry out as an expression of your consecration to the charity of Christ thus becomes your primary proclamation of God's word, a source of confidence and joy for those who encounter you. As often as possible, perform it with a smile, without complaining and without seeking recognition, supporting one another, also in your relationships with bishops and priests, as the expression of a church committed to growing in the service of the kingdom by appreciating all the grades of the ordained ministry. Through your cooperation and generosity, you will be a bridge linking the altar to the streets and the Eucharist to people's daily lives.
La carità sarà la vostra liturgia più bella.
Charity will be your most beautiful liturgy, and the liturgy your humblest service.
E veniamo all'ultimo punto, la gratuità come fonte di comunione.
Now we come to the final point, gratuity as a source of communion. Giving and expecting nothing in return unites, it creates bonds because it expresses and nurtures a togetherness that has no other aim but the gift of self and the good of others. St. Lawrence, your patron, when asked by his accusers to hand over the treasures of the church, showed them the poor and said, "These are our treasures."
È così che si costruisce la comunione, dicendo al fratello e alla sorella,
That is how communion is built, by telling your brothers and sisters by your words, but above all by your actions, both individually and as a community. You are important to us. We love you. We want you to be part of our journey and our life. This is precisely what you do. Those of you who are permanent deacons, do so as husbands, fathers, and grandparents who, by your service, choose to extend your families to include the needy in all the places where you live. Dear deacons, your mission sets you apart from society only to be re-immersed in it in order to enable it to be an ever more open and welcoming place for everyone. It is one of the finest expressions of a synodal church, one that goes forth. Soon, some of you, in receiving the sacrament of holy orders, will descend the steps of the ministry. I deliberately say descend and not ascend, because being ordained is not an ascent but a descent, whereby we make ourselves small, we lower ourselves and divest ourselves. In other words, in the words of St. Paul, through service we leave behind the earthly man and put on in charity the heavenly man.
Meditiamo tutti su quanto stiamo per fare. Mentre ci affidiamo alla Vergine Maria,
let us all reflect on what we are about to do, even as we entrust ourselves to the Virgin Mary, the handmaid of the Lord, and to Saint Lawrence, your patron. May they help us to experience every expression of our ministry with a humble and loving heart, and to be in gratuity, apostles of forgiveness, selfless servants of our brothers and sisters, and builders of communion.